All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's weekly Animatron webinar. Guys, as always, I am your personal Animatron Guru, Bryce. I'll be guiding you through today's topic of interest, where we'll be continuing last week's discussion about creating your own web banner advertisement. This week, we're going to be looking at the creation or the finalization of our web banners, and then testing them and then placing them or rather uploading them onto Google AdWords. For those of you who don't know, Google AdWords is a really quick and easy way for your do-it-yourselfers to get out there, create your own web ads, and promote your company, your product, or your services to the world through Google AdWords. And you can create your own advertisement campaigns instead of having to go through the excruciating process of dealing with an agency to create those advertisements and launch those campaigns for you. So if you are brand new to Animatron and totally unfamiliar with what we are and how our software works, we'd like you to go to the tutorial playlist. There's a hyperlink in the description area below this live stream. Please click on the description area, and there is a hyperlink down there that will take you to our YouTube channel's official tutorials playlist for those of you out there who are just starting now with Animatron. Anything from the interface, learning the certain tools and functionality and terminology of our program, of our software. I highly recommend clicking on that, watching through some of those tutorials and get yourself familiar before you get into the more complex tasks that we can create in Animatron. So as we go through this demonstration today, I ask you guys with topic-related questions, please fire away, send those through chat as we're talking, and I'll try to answer your questions as soon as they pop up. For anybody with off-topic questions, anything that's not relating to web banner advertisement creation or development or anything that I'm walking through in the demo at that time, I ask you to hold off towards the end of our demonstration, and we'll have a live Q&A session for you guys to ask your questions that are not specifically related to web banner advertisements or web banner animation. So let's just get right into it. I'll share my screen with you guys, and we're going to continue off where we left off last week. So to give you a little recap of what we did last week. So we covered a bit about web banner ad creation, and in Animatron, it's easy to duplicate your projects and essentially create templates that you can copy and create additional advertisements from the one you just created. So we kind of went over the process of conceptualizing our web banners through an Animatron project. And then also we set up and got ourselves ready to begin creating these web banner ads. So where I'm going to leave off here today is we're going to look at a few web banner ads that are successful. And again, we are gearing these web banner ads to eventually be uploaded to Google AdWords. Now, the one thing that you should know about most of these companies is that they do have limitations or requirements for your uploading process. So that's the first thing we're going to look into right now. For those of you who don't know Google AdWords, again, this is free for anybody to sign up with. All you have to do is attach your credit card, your personal information to this advertising campaign software, and you'll be able to set up your advertisements through Google AdWords. But the one thing you need to know is that every advertisement that's posted through this campaign has a limitation, and we'll take a look at the limitations right here. So what we're looking to do is post animated web banner ads. So what I'm looking at is in Google AdWords what is referred to as an image ad. So an image ad typically is just one individual picture in a couple of different formats. You can see that here under technical requirements. So if you don't have an animated image, it's just a static image that you're looking to post. As long as the file is under 150 kilobytes or smaller, if the file type is a JPEG, PNG, or GIF file format, you're okay. And as long as the image size is restricted to these particular image size requirements below, and that's generally most of the main advertisement sizes out there, the standardized pixel dimensions of these web banners. And then you can also click on a sample image to see which banner sizes work for which types of advertisements that you're trying to launch. So this will really give you the best understanding of what to expect when or how to prepare your web banner to ultimately be uploaded into Google AdWords. So let's look further down the list here. All I did was type in Google AdWords requirements, image ad requirements, and this was the website that came up. It's under support.google.com/AdWords policy. So this is the requirements list for you guys to adhere to when you're creating your web banner ads inside of Animatron. So the one thing that we're looking at now is animated image ads. We actually want to show off a little bit more pizzazz, something that might stand out to potential click lead from somebody who is viewing this online as they're going through their websites. And when your ad pops up, you want to make sure that that person sees it. They make sure that they remember it, and make sure that that is something that will reel in their cursor so that they'll click on that ad and get you your potential lead or your potential customer back to your website. So the first animated image ad that we have here is a GIF file type. Again, anything under 150 kilobytes. So the one thing that you have to understand about this number, 150 kilobytes, is that it is particularly small. So if we are to have an animated image ad, we need to make sure that we're testing frequently to make sure that we're not going over this limit. Otherwise, we cannot upload it whatsoever. So we need to make sure that we're holding within this 150 kilobytes limitation. Again, the image sizes are about the same. All the standardized image sizes, but a couple of them are restricted. And there's also an animation length and speed requirement throughout these animated GIF files. So the length, an animation length must be 30 seconds or shorter. So anything under 30 seconds. Again, like I said before, this 150 kilobyte requirement or limitation is probably not going to allow you to do much more than, I'd say, 6 to 10 seconds. Given the different types of items or objects you have imported into the Animatron project. So we'll go over that in a little bit. Animations can be looped, but the animations must stop after 30 seconds. What this means is that you can have maybe 1 or 2 images, or let's say 3 images even, looping over and over again, but they do have to stop at 30 seconds. I guess there's a limitation on repeated rendering of these GIF animations as an advertisement. So that may just be something that Google AdWords doesn't want you to get caught up in, offering an animation that continues to play through over and over. It might get annoying to the user or the viewer. And then the last in our length and speed requirement here is animated GIF ads must be slower than 5 frames per second. That's what FPS means, frames per second. So this is very relevant to that 150 kilobyte file size as well. Anything under 5 frames per second is very slow. It actually appears more as an image-to-image view. And we'll take a look at that when we try to render out our, our advertisement after we put it together. So these are the three things that we need to keep in mind for the length and speed of our GIF animations for advertisements. And again, everything that we're producing, when we test it, we need to make sure that those resulting files that we export are under 150 kilobytes. And then the last thing on the list here is an HTML5 ad. So HTML5 is great because there are very few animation length. Actually, there are none. There are no animation length or speed restrictions to it, but you, again, are restricted to 150 kilobytes. So all of which kind of filter into the same process, but it means that you can create a GIF animation or an HTML5 animation directly in Animatron and export both file types. You just need to make sure that you're staying under this number. And then, of course, your file types, zip files, CSS, JavaScript, HTML, GIF, PNG, JPEG, yada, 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 all of which will upload properly to Google AdWords. And this is the one that we're going to focus on today, is the HTML5 ad. And there's a reason why we want to use HTML5, because it is virtually universal, which means that anybody clicking on these ads or viewing these ads will be able to access them through mobile devices. You'll also be able to access them through tablets and then all PCs. Hi, welcome back, Les. Yeah, we did find the page of restrictions. Yeah, this was very helpful information. I'm glad you told me about that last week, because it really made me think about where we were going with the finalization of our web advertisement. So again, you just look down in here. There's a bunch of other limitations in here as well, but those are the three that we really need to keep in mind: is HTML5, animated GIF files, and then non-animated image ads, all of which we can produce inside of Animatron. So we will go back to Animatron, and what I will do is create a new project by clicking on Create Animation. And we'll wait until this opens up. Now, last week we covered a little about preset or predefined dimensions of our web banners, and we had them all into, we had uploaded them all into our project library of the one project that we had set up. And the project that we had set up, we wanted to set it up as a template. So what I can do is, from a fresh project, if I ever wanted to go back and grab that template that I had created, I can just go down, I click on my main menu, go down to Project, and click on Open Project. And through Open Project, I can take a look through here. We do have one that we made that was called Web Banner Template. And just hover over the name to see what it is. There we go. So I'll click on the thumbnail and it will open up that project. And this is what we had worked on last week. So we had set this up to be a 640 by 360. I believe we wanted it to be 338 by 280, if I'm not mistaken. But there's a reason why we uploaded everything into our project library, is though while we're selecting the advertisement size, we can just go back to the marketplace, click on this little icon down here at the bottom of the toolbar, and then go back up to the top where it says Market and Project Library. And I'm going to switch over to my project library. Again, this is where our template comes into play. We've saved a bunch of standardized web banner sizes for us to follow. So we can actually just drag and drop any one of these to the canvas and make sure that they stay the same exact size, and we can restrict the canvas to this size. So I'm going to look through here. I forget which one is which. But again, to refresh your guys' memory, I saved the image of our defaults, and I'll just click and drag this onto the canvas, and we can zoom in and take a look at the default banner sizes. So I was looking through an article the other day about what the more popular what the most popular web banner advertisements are by clicks. And it turns out to be a medium rectangle. A 300 by 250 pixel medium rectangle is one of the highest click rate web banner advertisements that you can generate. So that's what we're going to stick with here today, is a 300 by 250 pixel. So I'll get rid of this image. Again, you can find this just by typing best web banner dimensions or best web banner sizes into Google search or any one of your search engines. And just go through the images, and there's a number of these out there. It'll give you the more standardized versions. So I'm going to get rid of this. I don't really need the layer. So I'm working with the 300 by 250. Now that I know that, I mean, if I didn't have this uploaded already into my project, into my project library, I could just go up to my project settings by clicking on this little gear icon. And then I can change my size, the size of my canvas by pixel dimensions to 300 by 250. So it's 300 width by 250 height. And this essentially sets our canvas to that size, so that if we had more scenes, all of these scenes would be restricted to that canvas dimension. So I don't really need this text, so I'm just going to click on it on our canvas and delete it from our layers list. But what I will get into here is that if you want to have a standardized background as part of our HTML5 web banner, you can always click, again, this is in our project settings by clicking on this gear icon. I can click on the background color thumbnail right here, and it will bring up my color swatches. And I can choose from a number of preset swatches for a solid color, a gradient, a radial, or a pattern. But generally, we can stick with the basics. So again, I want to keep it fresh in everybody's mind that we are trying to keep this banner restricted to under 150 kilobytes. And it's very important, because if we go over just 1 kilobyte, it will not allow us to upload it to Google AdWords. So the difference here is solid colors generally render a lot simpler than multiple colors. So you could go with a solid color background or a gradient. A gradient will tend to increase the size of the initial document. But because it's not extremely detrimental to what we're trying to produce, we can just start with this. And if we need to go back to it later and change it to drop our file size, we can always just go back to our project settings. I'll go back and click on the background color and just change it back to our solid color if we need to. So I'm just going to do a gradient. Again, to change our gradient colors, you click on the node on the canvas. And then once you click on the node, you can select a color for that node itself. So we'll go with something a little bit airy. And I'll extend my gradient out so that it's a bit easier on the eyes. And again, with these color nodes, this is a good segue. For anybody who is interested in modifying the colors of anything in your Animatron projects, you can always just single click on the line, and this creates a new node that you can change the color of. So you can add multiple nodes here and change the color throughout the entire gradient. And the other cool thing about this is that each one of these nodes is keyframeable, which means that if I wanted to have this change over time, first of all, I would have to have this applied to an object. It will not keyframe if it is on the background. If it is on the project background itself, if it's the actual canvas background color. But if we had it on an object, let's say a rectangle that we wanted to be 300 by 250 size, lock that. I can apply this gradient color. All right, I can add multiple colors along the way. Just make these something that is not too terrible to look at. But I can also drag the gradient out on that shape. And then in doing so, if we have animation mode on, I can always move ahead on my timeline and reposition this gradient. And if you look down here on my timeline, it has keyframed that gradient into place. So this is an animation that occurs for that image or for that shape. So in order to make this a temporary background, and this is something I always try to encourage people to do with any of their projects, is instead of using the actual background color, is creating a shape, a rectangle shape that fills in the canvas. And you can animate your colors, animate anything about the shape, and use it as your background. Just lock it into place. So because it's not directly centered with our canvas, all we have to do is go up to our alignment tool. That's this little icon up here. And align to canvas. And I want to center it in the vertical and horizontal positions. But if you notice, because I have animation mode on, it's animating it. It gave it a motion path because I'm back to 0 seconds. So in order to avoid doing that, what I'll do is go back to design mode, and then I can orient it, align it to my canvas, center and center. And in doing so, I can just lock this down. I'll just rename it real quick. Let's call this BG, background, and lock the layer. And this way, if I ever wanted to keep this as a temporary background, I don't want to disturb the background, and it also maintains that animation, the color animation that we added in there. So that's something good to remind you guys of if you're doing anything more complex, like panning shots in your advertisement, looking up at the sky, looking down at the ground. So we can go back in here and change that around. And I'd like to, because these colors are a little distracting. So let's, first I'm going to get rid of my keyframe. I'll select the keyframe and delete it and go back to 0 seconds here. So again, like I said, we can have something looking like it's starting from up above in the clouds, and we'll give this a nice light blue color. And we'll gradually change this as we get down to the lower portion of this. Right, my last color, I'll do maybe a bit darker of a green. And again, we can always drag these nodes out so that they're not so obtrusive. I can also hold down the Alt button. Oops. Oh, that was a mistake. I'm going to Control Z back. And if you want to keep a color, if you want to keep one of these colors in memory, it's the reason why we have these little swatch charts over here underneath our color palette. So if I have this color currently selected, I can either add this gradient swatch sample to my gradient swatches in our library, or I can go back to solid color and find whatever color that is and save that to my swatch library there. If it's not there, we just have to look at the hex color. So you can click on one of these nodes, select the hex field. So this is an array of 6 different letter or number digits, and I'll just hit Control C to copy it and go to my other node that I want to keep the same color. Click on the hex field and Control V, and that will make both of these nodes the same exact color, and that way we can get an expansion of this color between two neighboring nodes. So I don't want to go too much in depth here with my background, but what I was getting at is that this entire gradient can be moved up and down. So what I'll do is change animation mode click on animation, the toggle at the very top of our editor. This will basically allow us to keyframe at any point in our timeline for this object, for this background image. And let's just go create an end portion for this. I'll right click and insert keyframe. Let's say we want to end on this color, something like that. So I want to make this lighter. All right, so let's see. So we have more or less a sky color and a ground color. And what I'm looking to do is create this animated effect that looks like the background is moving. I keep accidentally keyframing everything. If that ever happens and you want to reset another keyframe, you can select the keyframe that you want to copy and just hold down the Alt key on your keyboard and left click and drag it to the beginning. That way it keeps them the same exact colors. So there's no more transition between them. So what I was saying was we can start from our sky from up in the air. So what I'll do is grab my node, drag it down, and then drag the color from the top of the node down. And what this does is now it will animate from the bottom to the top, or vice versa. All right, so over 2 seconds, and if I ever wanted to change the amount of time that this happens in, I can grab that keyframe and drag it down my timeline, and now it happens over 4 seconds time. All right, so 4 seconds is a long time when we think about advertisements. We want to show as much information as we can, but not overwhelm our viewer with this web ad or how much information they're taking in. So essentially, we have animated our background color. And now that we've done so, we can lock it down and maintain that speed and keyframed animation just of our colors moving in the background. Now, if we wanted to add something a little bit more interesting to look at, we can just go directly to our marketplace. And this is where our drag and drop features from our market really increase the speed at which we can create these banner ads. So we have a lot of pre-designed or pre-animated professional sets here that you can look through. We have nature, animal, city. So you can go and poke through some of these categories and see what you'd like. Let's go with nature. Let's see what we have here. So we have clouds, we have birds. Let's see what we have here as far as birds. So you can see any one of these objects. They can be animated, and to check whether or not they are animated, you can just simply drag and drop them onto the canvas and see if they play through. So apparently they just move. The flock just moves in one direction, and they have a slight wing motion on them. You see them flapping a little bit. So if that's something that we wanted to show at some point in our animation from top to bottom, we could do that. So now with our flock here, I can make these a little bit bigger by dragging them out on the canvas. Again, I have animation mode on, so I have to be very careful about where my playhead is at on our timeline, so I don't accidentally add some keyframes that we don't want. But what I can do is start them off scene, or off canvas rather. And from 0 seconds, let's say to 1 second, because this goes by pretty quickly, I can just drag this entire flock across, and that will occur in 1 second time. So I have now just animated our flock moving past the screen. But what you can do to give this a little bit more, of a realistic tone is you can change the size of them while you're keyframing it. So let's say they get really small as they fly away in the distance. So I'll go to the very end. And then because animation mode is on, any change that I make at that point in time, so I'm on the 1 second mark on our timeline, I can scale down. And now if we play this back, they get really small as they go off into the distance. And if we're not going to reuse these, or if we don't want to keep these on the canvas for a set period of time, we can right click on that keyframe, change end action, and end, so that it will not be viewable past that 1 second mark. They'll just disappear. All right, so that's our flock of birds. Another thing you can do if you're creating something to refine this animation throughout. Oh, I forget that I have the background color still active. So I'll go back to my project settings, go back to a solid white color, and we should be reset here. That way I can use my improvised animated background color and keep that in our animation. So now we have a flock that's flying away in the distance. If we wanted to add some variation to this, to how it's animated, because it's just one, there's no change in the rate at which these birds fly across the screen. It's just really mechanical. So one thing that we can do to change that effect is to make it a little bit more interesting to look at. We can right click in between these keyframes, set easing, and we can add some easing to the entire animation from the first keyframe to the last. So we can do that. I'll hit enter, and that's the rate at which our birds fly across. Right, so we can do that. Again, let's find a couple of other things to attach here. We have mountains. So this is something we can do is drag and drop. Let's see, that's not going to work. Here we go. We have some mountains here. So I'll just drag and drop mountains to the background. And these will come up slowly over time as well. Right, so I'll just have this go to 2 seconds and appear in this position. So over 2 seconds, it will come into view. And let's give it a little angle so it looks as if we're panning to it. So we'll just, at the 2 second mark, position it to where we want the image to hold on. And then at the 0 second mark, where the image comes into view. So I can do this, and we'll make it appear as if it's slowly coming into view. Oh, I want to get this off canvas. Right, something like that. And then we can add another row of mountains. Let's see here. Oops. Okay, I have to reset this new set of hills. Let me see if there's a different version of those. There we go. So mountains should be in the background, so I'll have to reposition mountains underneath hills. That way, this is the thing that's being seen sooner than all the others. We'll add that in the background to start with, and then kind of have a finishing point where this is shown here. All right, so we can have these happen a lot quicker. Let's drag the end keyframes to 1.5 seconds, and this will speed up the animation of the mountains and the hills getting into position. Let's show a bit more of the hills in the background. So a lot of this is really up to you to determine where it happens and when it happens. So to get past this, right, this is our Web Banner how it's going to be viewed. We have to give it an amount of time to play over and not have it so long that it would take a long time for this person to see the ad and click past it or scroll past it without even noticing that it's there. So again, we want to have all this occurring within a small period of time. Ideally, anything between 3 and 6 seconds, I'd say, is pretty good. But the shorter, the better. The more information that you can give in the shorter period of time without making everything look too distracting is probably the best way to go with this. So I'll just add a little minute change over this next 1.5 seconds with both our mountains and our hills. So what this does is it will have the birds fly by, and then our mountains and our hills are still kind of shuffling a little bit. And again, this is where the easing comes in. We can have easing on all of these keyframes. All I have to do is hold down Control, or if you're on a Mac, hold down Command. Click an area or drag an area around these keyframes, and they'll all be selected with these blue highlights around them. And from here, I can simply right-click, set easing, and set the easing for all of these actions to take place. Right, so let's do that and see what we get with a circle. A lot of stuff happens really quick here. All right, let's undo that. So anyway, you'll spend a lot of time tweaking these to make them look accurate, and we can add the sun rising in the background. Again, the sun is in the back of the mountains, so we'll just do from down here. So we'll keep this up here at the beginning. And then as it plays through, we can just have this pop into view. Right, and then slowly work its way down over time to the very end of our 3-second animation. So we just have a couple of birds, a couple of mountains. What is our web banner about? Ideally we would have something like, if this was a hiking company or a product about, maybe about piloted drones or something. I don't know. You can think of something to fit in with this whole feature. Mountains, desert, maybe it's a camel pack commercial or sorry, web advertisement. And we want to capitalize on that just by giving the 2 tidbits of information that we need to show. Is that maybe like planning a trip? So let's do that. I'll put in my text elements. Planning a trip, question mark. One thing I want to cover real quick as I'm putting this text in here. I'll just change the font real quick. So the whole idea of maintaining our web banner within that 150 kilobyte restriction is that anytime you can use internet sourced or web sourced fonts, the rule is that you should always choose vector over PNG images, and always choose PNG images. Always choose. Oh, I got this backwards. You always want vector above everything else. If you can't use vector, try to use JPEG for, let's say, like your business logos or any particular font that you can't recreate in vector. And the reason for JPEG is that you can save these JPEG images using Photoshop for the web. And it basically degrades the image enough so that it's still viewable, but is also within the parameters to make it a small image so that when we export this later, it's within that 150 kilobyte size. And then PNGs, it's always a good idea to either use very small PNGs or just convert your PNGs into JPEGs using a program like Photoshop. And I'll show you that in a few moments here as well. So let's choose, you could spend all day picking your fonts, making these minute changes to the animation itself. So I'll put in a little snippet of text, planning a trip, question mark. And then I'll just have this animate as well. As if this was, what is this? When something like this happens, guys, you have an element that you want to work with, but you have all these other elements around it. And sometimes when you click and drag, it doesn't grab the right thing, right? So if I was trying to grab panning from here, it would click. It would sooner select the mountains than it would the text. All you have to do is lock those layers, and you don't have to deal with accidentally selecting those as you're trying to reset, like, let's say, this text. So we want the text to show in, let's see, above mountains, but behind hills. Maybe we should change the color of this a bit. So it stands out. One of the things you can do if you want like a drop shadow appearance, you can do set it to either like black or white to have a base color. There we go. We'll do black to start, and it will animate to white as it goes through. And then I'll just nudge it. We'll nudge it here. And then this last little section here over 2 seconds, I can change the opacity of it so that it fades off in the background. So starting here, planning a trip, and then in this last little second, we can have our business logo show up with whatever we want to offer the audience to have them click on this web banner. Obviously, there's not a lot of, not too much hype behind it, or not much reason for me to click on this yet. I want to know what the company is. And like I said, you'd sooner choose JPEG over PNG, and you'd sooner choose vector over JPEG for optimizing the end result of this web banner. So one of the things I can do is import. Actually, I'll do this through my import button. I'll import a basically a generic business logo. I'll click on the import button. I can either select my files, or I'll drag and drop them. Again, I already have my folder open here with my image I want to use. So I'll go find my image. And here we go, generic logo company, right? So here's my generic logo company brand. What I'd like to do is have this appear as if it's coming up behind the hills and then settle into place. But one of the things that I'm going to be thinking about the whole time is, because I have all of this white boundary around it, would it be better to use a PNG? Now, ideally, you'd want a PNG so you could see past the white base color in the image. But for the purposes of the image ad for Google AdWords, we want to make sure that we're using JPEGs, especially if it's an image that we've just captured. And again, ideally, vector is what we want to use. So if we had an SVG version of this logo, that would be 10 times better. If we do not have an SVG logo of this company logo itself, what we can do is hide everything, unhide the logo that we want to convert, and we have this cool little icon here that's called Vectorize. And we first have to select the logo itself, go over to the Vectorize button and click on it. And this vectorization will allow you to view, hold on, let me see if I can get this into view here. Select the logo, click on vectorize, and move it out of the way. And then you can change the color sampling, number of colors. Let's see. We have some gradients in here, so obviously the number of colors is going to degrade the image. But what this is doing is it's taking a JPEG image and converting it into vector shapes and colors. So we can do average color, most frequent color. So I'm just going to do most frequent and play with these sliders. Smallest component area, shape smoothness. So we can really get a more refined version of this image. But we essentially want this to click preview just to sample it. And you'll see that even with the small amount of color changes we made, we'll go back to average color and see if that makes a difference. This is the end result, or what the vector result will be of this. So I can have this sample, let's say 16 colors, and let's go up to 32 and see if that gives us a better result. So there's a lot of play in here to where you can get this vector to generate from. But like I said, if you had your designers, or if you had already designed this logo in SVG format, it would be easily imported into Animatron. And you'd be able to cut down the file size, the end resulting file size of your web banner. But no, we have a JPEG image with the white background. I'm not going to spend all the time trying to get rid of the background. But one of the things that we need to look at also is that this logo is the size of the banner itself. You can always reset the canvas to its original size, or how it's going to be viewed when you see it on a web page, by hitting Control-0 or Command-0 if you're on a Mac computer. And this is the full size of the banner itself. And then this is the size that we will see this company logo come in as. But one thing you want to be aware of is that when we select the object, it shows us what the native size of the object is, 300 by 90, because it's limited to the canvas area. That's why it's 300 in size, width. But also the scale. It's 40% reduced size from its original image size. So if we were to bring this to 100%, that's the actual size of the logo itself. And it's obviously way bigger than the web banner. One of the things that you want to keep in mind is the smaller the image size, the smaller that we're going to see this. Again, the smaller the end resulting zip file that we'll get, so that we can upload it to Adwords. So because this is a difficult thing to get around, one of the things we have to do is bring this into Photoshop. We realized, I'll just undo, because Photoshop is primarily bitmap editor, it's one of the easiest things that we can use to convert it down in file size, so that we can export it and then bring it back into Animatron at this size. So at this size is a good size for our web banner, and all you have to do is click on the object at that size and look at the pixel dimensions that it's at, 300 by 90. So I'll keep this information, I'll write this down. I'll open up Photoshop, Adobe Photoshop. And yes, this is an older version. This is Creative Suite 4. So I am behind in the times with my personal Photoshop suite. So I'll just go to File and Open. I'll find that image. Here's generic logo company. And one of the things you can do here, just to drop the image size itself, is go to Image. Let's see. Image size, I believe, is what we'd like to reduce. And then we can reduce this by pixels or percentage. So what you saw before in Animatron is that it had to resize to 40% of its original scale. So all I have to do is click on this little guy for the pixel dimension and change it to percentage. I'll go to the width factor and type in 40, because that's 40% of its original size. I'll hit OK. And just to make sure that this is the proper size that we want to see it in Animatron, I'll go back to image, look at my image size again in pixel dimensions, and now it's down to 300 by 90, how we saw it and how we want to see it in Animatron. So I'll hit OK. And then finally, if we want to make this more sizable for our needs, we can go to File. And Adobe Photoshop has this real powerful tool specifically for web images or web media in general. It's called Save for Web and Devices. So this is the quickest way, just by clicking on that. So Save for Web and Devices. This is the quickest way to see what the end result of this image is in its file size. So if you look at the bottom of the preview window, the bottom left here, it says we have a JPEG image, and at this current size and at this current setting, it's 16 kilobytes by itself. But we want to knock this down so that it's not too heavy for our needs. What we can do is go to the presets. Go up to the top right where we can optimize it. Make sure optimized is checked on. It creates a smaller but less compatible file. But that's fine because all we need to do is import it into Animatron at a smaller size. We can click on the rate at which it is generating these colors, and we can go through each one of these, and I'll actually zoom into the logo so you can see how degraded it's getting as we're changing this. So this is a low setting. It looks very choppy, has not so much color information staying in it. But just by changing it to, let's say, medium from maximum, I've already knocked this image down to basically a quarter of the original image size, file size, I should say. So if it's still too degraded for you, you can inch the quality up just a hair, and we can get a general increase in the image degradation. So I'll just try to keep this around 6 kilobytes, and you'll see right here it's just about at 6, and it's a 50% quality from the original image. So you can play with any one of these factors, the width and height of it, how it is smoothing the edges, and each one of these will change the image end result. Right, so we can keep clicking through these and try to get different variations of how the RGB values appear, and that's red, blue, green colors. And once we get it down to a certain size, again, 6 kilobytes is what we're at, we'll just hit save. And I'll save it as generic logo optimized. Right, so generic logo optimized, image only as a JPEG, and then just hit save. So now what we have, I'll get rid of my Photoshop image. We have this image. Bring my folder back so we can compare the sizes between the two. I have the original image that is 32.9 kilobytes, right? So that is already encroaching in on our 150 kilobyte size. But when we optimized it, now we get something that's 6 kilobytes. So the difference between the original size, right, 40% size, and then a little color degradation by saving for web from Photoshop, we're able to get that down to 6 kilobytes. So now that we have that restricted size, we can click and drag this into our canvas and then get rid of the original. Just straight delete it from our layers panel. And then also make sure that none of that stuff is visible. None of the extra images are visible on our web banner. And you see now that we have this optimized logo in here, it doesn't look too dissimilar from the original image that we had before. Or I'll bring it back and I'll show you the comparison between the two. So at this native size, right, hit Control-0 to bring our canvas back to its native size, or how the web banner actually is scaled to our monitor, or Command-0 if you're on a Mac computer. And I'll just hide the optimized version. Now let's zoom in. You'll see the difference when I zoom in. If I hide the optimized version, it's a little bit cleaner, but again, this file size is nearly a sixth of our 150 kilobyte restriction. But if I bring my optimized file back and I look at it in its size that we're going to be seeing it on the web, there's not much change at all. So that's perfect. We're able to drop it from 32 kilobytes to 6 kilobytes. So that's a huge savings as far as images are concerned. Again, PNG images will come in a lot larger because PNG saves a channel for transparency, and transparency eats up a lot of file size. So again, JPEG is better than PNG as far as file size is concerned, and vector or SVG, scalable vector graphics, are the optimal way that we can get some animated elements in here. But if it's something like a logo, again, business logos, if you don't have an SVG version, we can always downscale these in Photoshop and make these a bit more optimized for our needs. So I'll get rid of the original image here. I'll just delete it from my layer. I'll unhide everything, and I'll add my little reveal for my business logo. All right, so I have animation mode on at 1.5 seconds. Let's center this. So at 1.5 seconds, I'll have it down here. Let's say it's hiding behind our mountains or our hills, actually. So I'll just drag it underneath our hills layer. And then its reveal will be, let's say, at 2 seconds. So it gives you just enough time to see the company logo. Now, obviously, if we had this in SVG, you would be able to see the mountains behind it. But because we're restricted to that, all we have to do, or all we really can do, is bring this logo up into view so that we're not losing. Let's see if we can inch it up a little bit more. Okay. All right, and that's it. So 3 seconds long. We have the question in play, or what the person is trying to see from this entire event. And maybe we can actually have these birds appear sooner. But we have the information we need to show the viewer or show the person to eventually click. Oh, thank you, Les. That's actually a very good thing to point out. Les says, if your program doesn't refer to optimize for web, the general setting for most computer screens is 72 dpi. So the image itself that you're editing through Photoshop, as long as it's within 72 dpi or smaller, you should have, you should be able to recreate that image degradation or that color degradation to a reasonable file size. So after we have created our little animation here, we have the text, we have the company logo. As we saw before, we can have this same thing loop up to 30 seconds, but it has to stop at 30 seconds. So it's a good thing we made this 3 seconds, because we can have it loop 10 times if we really wanted to. So let's test that out and see what our ultimate file size is if we were to loop it 10 times over. So 30 seconds was the limitation for our looping. So what I can do is go up to my scene inspector up at the top right here, and I'll double click on the number, which is seconds, right? If you hover over it, it says how many seconds that this scene is visible. I'll just type in 30, because that's the maximum amount of time we can have it loop. And you'll see our scene duration flag has disappeared completely. What happened was, because we manually entered it in our scene, it had pushed the flag to the 30-second mark on our timeline. So I can scale up my timeline here just so we can see all of the keyframe information that's going to be looped. And then the last thing in the process here is I want to make sure that each one of these images is ending at each one of the images that is ending at 3 seconds, so that will loop over and over again. So what I can do is shift select all of the objects I want to keep in that looping animation, combine the layers, right? Because they're highlighted, I can combine them into one group layer. I'll rename this. I'll just say animation element, whatever you want to rename the layer to. And you'll see the last keyframe exists at 3 seconds. But what we want to have it do is loop for 10 times up to 30 seconds. So what we can do is right click on the very last keyframe at 3 seconds, change end action, and loop. And since we know that 3 seconds times 10 is exactly 30 seconds, I can just tell it to loop 10 times. Right? And then when I go back to 0 seconds and hit enter, I can see it play through. And this is how it will be revealed as somebody sees it on the web page. So it's a 3-second loop that happens 10 times on our timeline. And you'll see how it ends at the 30-second mark. And we'll just get a good idea of what the end resulting file size is of this loop. And to bring the file size down, we maybe we'll do it under 30 seconds. So we'll only have it loop twice. Or we can even look at the exact file sizes of each of these images. And since we only have one image in the project, it should be pretty simple to understand from the end result. So let's test it now. Now that we have the web banner, we have our logo in place, we have all of the text information, all of the animated elements involved. All we have to do is go to download. Again, for you guys who are interested in having these web banners for your own companies or for your personal products or services, you need to make sure that you have a pro account, pro subscription with Animatron. Otherwise, you will not be able to download the HTML5 optimized zip files. And what this does, again, just click on download. With our pro subscription, we're allowed to download the HTML5 code. And we just click on HTML5 code, and you'll see at the very bottom of my web browser that it has downloaded a zip file named Web Banner Ad Template 1, because we never changed the name of our project here. But you can click on the little arrow next to it and show in folder, and it will show you all of the stuff that you've just brought in. Here, I'm going to dump this onto my desktop so that it's in the proper folder. Webinar files. And let's dump this into a new folder. So I'll just create a new folder so everything stays in the same place. I'll call this Web Banner Test. And I'll drag the zip file into that folder. So everything's in one nice, neat folder. I'll right click it. Since I'm on PC, we can open with WinZip or just extract it to this folder. So I'll do extract here. With a Mac, you'll have to use an unarchiving utility. And then through this, it will give you all of the information that you have stored in your project, and you can actually see the file size of all of this. So the zip file itself came out to be 78 kilobytes, and that's with all of the animation and this one image and the one piece of text, the one piece of font that we used. The font itself is 17.1 kilobytes. If we were to get rid of this font, we would save ourselves 17 kilobytes. So one of the things that we can actually do to knock off this font size so that we can make it even smaller is go back to our project, open up our group our animation group, find the font, find the text, right? Planning a trip, and select the text itself. Because it is a text object, it has to save the font for it. So Les, when you loop anything on the timeline itself, it's looping 10 times, but it is not saving the same image 10 times. It's using that same image, but it is replaying it through the HTML5 code those same 10 times, but it's not adding them together. So it will only ever be, here, let me look back at the folder itself. So the only thing included is the HTML5 document itself, the player that the HTML5 is embedded in, the image that we used for the generic logo company, right, this guy, and this guy stays at 6 kilobytes. So it is not just adding 6 kilobytes 10 times, it's just using the same exact image over and over again. So let's get back to the font optimization. So again, because we chose a custom font from our library, that's taking up 17 kilobyte size. Not that we need to drop the file size, because the zip folder itself is 78 kilobytes. It's well under the 150 kilobyte requirement that Google AdWords restricts us to. But just to show you how to get rid of this font file, you can go back into your Animatron project, click on the layer that text exists on, right-click on the text itself, and go to Convert to Shape. Now, something to be aware of with Convert to Shape, what we covered a little bit last week, is that you can convert text objects into vector shapes, and this will save you a lot of space or a lot of end resulting file size just by turning them into shapes. You see that in doing so, I guess it lost the color information because I changed it into vector shapes. But to see the actual, here, let's change this again. To see the actual letters involved in our new vector shapes that we converted from a text object, we can click on the layer's thumbnail image to go into that whole section of text. So now that I've clicked on it, it gives me each individual letter as a vector shape. And the way that we can see that they're vector is if you use our direct selection tool and click on each shape, that each one of these objects is a vector object that we can modify later if we wanted to customize this font. Right, so if that, you can always incorporate special elements from your logo text or logo font into the text that you're doing just by editing the vector shape. So just so we can go back into what we're doing. Also, this way that you've converted your text object into vector, now you can take each individual letter object and animate them into place individually. Right, so now we can go through each one, move them, and maybe pretty much customize the way that this text moves into place. So we can do even more advanced things with our text. So let's, if it uses the same image just once, how would reducing the number of loops reduce the file size in any way, or would it? Technically it would, because it has to render out all of that information for 30 seconds. The longer that anything lasts, as far as it being rendered to our player, it'll make it a little bit larger. But honestly, because most of this stuff is vector, you probably won't notice too much of a file difference or file size difference by knocking down the amount of loops. But just with that in mind, vector, again, is better than having JPEG images because the amount of the file size of each JPEG image. And then having a JPEG image is 10 times better than having PNG images. And we saw that with the reduction of those file sizes. So anyway, so back to our text here. So I'm going to undo this to get rid of the animation I applied to it. But now that it is a vector image, let me do this animation here. So what was that, 1 second, 1.5 seconds, I think. Yeah, so 1 second. I'm going to change the color information on there because I converted it after the fact with the color animated on top of it. So I can select all of these letters. Let me get this back into view for you. I'll right click and insert keyframe. And in doing so, I can change this back to black as the original color of our text up to that point. We wanted this the other way around, my bad. So I'll do 0 seconds, I'll change this to black, and it will animate to white, which is how we had it before. And then on the upper level, it will fade. The opacity is animated to fade away after that. So what I should have is starting out at black text, hit enter, changing to white, and our little logo popping up after. All right. So with those simple edits, one of the things that I can do, again, download HTML5 code. It gives me that zip file, and I'll just drag this out here, put it into my folder. Let's see. Yeah, let's keep both. Okay, so this is the new one. It actually made the file size larger. That's interesting. Let me create a new folder. Let's see if this is still keeping the font in there. Because the font file is needed to show it in the player, let's just dump it in here and extract it. Yeah, it's still keeping the font file. What's interesting about this, though, is that we don't really need the font. I'm not sure why it's still processing the font after we got rid of it. Let's see. Yeah, it's not attached to anything. So this is something that we may have to look into to see if we can get this to stop adding the font file in with the zip folder. But if this does happen, you can always extract the zip file itself, and then just delete the font file. And the font file, you'll notice, is a WOFF, or it could be a true type font, which is a TTF. And you can just delete that from the group. Did I bring the wrong one in here? Yes, I did. Okay, let me do this again. Bring back out here. This is the new folder. So this is the new one, right? It's a little bit larger in file size because of the new vector information. But like I said, it's probably keeping, see if it still keeps the font file. Yeah, it's still keeping a font file in here. If we wanted to, we could select it and delete it after extracting it into this folder. Yep, delete it. And now I can select these 3 items that I've extracted: the player file, the JavaScript file itself, the HTML file, and then the image that we're using for our logo. And right click and let's see, add to a new RAR file. No, I think we need a zip file. I may not have WinZip converter in here, but let's just see if it works if we archive it to WinRAR. There we go. Okay, so I have a RAR extractor or archiver. You can change the archive format to zip, and let's just see if this will produce something that we can use. But now let's see the file size. Come on. There we go. So our file size is 62 kilobytes, and that's without the font. We don't need the font file anymore because we converted it to vector. So instead of it being 79 or the previous one with the font in it was 78, we changed everything to vector and then extracted it, got rid of the font file. Obviously, we'll have to work to get this doing it automatically through the Animatron editor to get rid of the font file if it's not in use. But what we did was we just manually got rid of it by extracting it and then re-zipping the folder. So what I'll do is, I'll rename this. I'll call this web. Always get in the habit of putting underscores in your files. This way it's just easier to keep in sequential order if you're creating multiple versions. So web banner ad, we'll call this example. Call this web banner ad example. And then the final step in our process here is bringing this into Google AdWords. So I'm going to move my folder aside. We're going to move out of Animatron since we already have the zip file. And we're going to go into Google AdWords. I already have it open. I'm already signed up, and I already have a campaign set so that we can just keep adding these new web ads to our campaign. So I'll just go to ads. I'll add a new ad, and I'll add a image ad, or what's referred to as an image ad. So if you hover over it, it says use text, graphics, and animations in your ad, or upload your own. So you can compile ones that have already been created, or things that have already been designed for you, and just upload them directly. But just to make sure that the zip file is under 150 kilobytes. So you can get ad ideas. You just type in whatever you're looking for, or you just upload an ad. So since we already have the ad, I'll click on it. I can either browse files or drag and drop them. What I'll do is drag and drop my web banner ad example. And there we go. This is the previewer, right? You can click on it. It will give you the exact preview size. So we have our text information, we have our animated vector elements in the background, and we have our image that comes in here. And since we got rid of the font, it's optimized the size so this will run continually and at a better rate of speed. So again, 63 kilobytes, that is awesome. We have another just about 90 kilobytes of space that we can use other images. We can separate images. We can use product images if this was, let's say, something for food. You know, food pictures are really common, really popular. But you always have to get a nice, crisp image of that food if you really want to know that it is food to begin with. So if this was a food advertisement or something for a restaurant, just remember you have enough file size left that you can fill in up to 150 kilobytes of information. So keep that in mind, and you can build your advertisement in Animatron. If you needed to change anything, just go back into your scene and select the object that needed to be swapped out, like let's say our image. Right, so we can swap out our generic logo here for, let's say, a PNG image and see if that makes any difference, or bring in the original image and have a more crisp and clean appearance to it. But this looks pretty good as we've optimized it. So just go through. It's all about testing. It's all about keeping everything under that 150 kilobyte size. And after previewing, you can set it, save your image advertisement. Make sure that you have a URL that when you click on it, it's bringing them to the bringing your potential click or customer to the right web URL that you want them to go to. And then you can add all of the little tidbits in between. So I'll just add this to one of our ad groups and hit save. Oh, wants me to do this. I'll just send it to animatron.com. Same thing there. Save it. And now our web banner ad example is attached to our campaign, our HTML5 test campaign. Right, and then you can click on these and edit each of the additional features in here, or change anything you need to change. And it's as simple as that. You can always set the amount of money that you'd like to spend each day for the amount of clicks that you're going to get. So with Google AdWords, again, you can optimize your own web advertisements, animate them, upload any image files that you need to show off your business, your company, your service, or your products. It's so easy to get to this point, and this is now a template for us. I could save this and just swap out the animations for our mountains and the text that we're using and all the different features in here, the background colors, what have you. I can change all this stuff out after the fact just by going into the project, clicking on our main menu, and then go under Project tab and then duplicate it. And now we have a Web Banner Ad template. We can rename it. It's no longer a copy, it is O2. Let's just, instead of template, now it's our example. I'll just rename it Web Banner Ad Example 01. This is our first iteration of this web banner ad. So we're inside the limitations. Again, look up all of the requirements for Google AdWords so that you can create these within their requirements, their restrictions, and then have at it. Make your animations, test them, export, right? Click on download. You have to have your Pro subscription in Animatron to be able to download the HTML5 code. Otherwise, you can try to export under GIF animation. Let me give you an example of the GIF animation real quick. So let's look at our restrictions for GIF. Here we go. Under 30 seconds. If you guys don't want to pay for the Pro subscription, you can do an animated GIF, but it's going to look very, very different. It's not going to operate at the same speed. Obviously, it's going to look a little choppy because it has to be slower than 5 frames per second. And then we should be able to extract something from this. So instead of HTML5, we'll go here. We can go download, go to GIF, and like it said, under 5 frames per second, we'll make it 4 and see what it gives us. It already goes for 30 seconds, and it's 300 by 250 pixels, and I'll just hit continue. We'll wait for this GIF to render out, and we can download it. And you can see already 4 frames per second is not very healthy looking. But obviously there are ways that you can generate some of these images. If you see the gradient we animated in the background, you can see how distorted it is. The gradient is degraded so much in our GIF rendering. That alone, plus the jittery nature of our 4 frame per second animation, is not a very welcome outcome. But you can create it for free using Animatron, just using the GIF export. Connected to actual keywords that are relevant to your product. Yes. Yes, thank you, Les, again. For Les is saying, for anyone unfamiliar with AdWords, you might mention that the ads need to be connected to actual keywords that are relevant to your product or service. You bid on the words more than the animated ads themselves. That's true. So linking the keywords to your advertisement through your AdWords campaign, Les is saying, is just as important, if not more important, so that people will be able to see this more, and you will get more click-throughs for having those keywords linking to this particular web ad. So now that we have a GIF rendered for us, what we can do is right-click on the GIF that is spit out for us, and we can just right-click on it and save image as. The reason why it's an image is because it's a GIF. It's an animated GIF file, but because it's a series of images, that's how you'll save it out. So again, I will name this Web Banner Ad Example GIF. And if we look at this, let me see if my folder will reveal it here. If we bring this into our test file, so our animated GIF, because it's rendering the entire process, is 1.16 megabytes. This is huge, well past the allotted 150 kilobyte ability or the restrictions that Google AdWords sets for us. So that's something that we'd have to look into to restrict the size of this. And what we had shown here before was that we loop this to 30 seconds. If we restrict this to only loop, let's say twice, what I can do is click on my end action. I will go to loop and I'll just type in 2. So this will only loop through twice. It will make it 6 seconds long. And what we can do is test it at 2 loops at 6 seconds. Because it's an image, the GIF file size will be a lot larger for the longer that it plays through our timeline. I can hit download and GIF again. Just for kicks, let's see if we can do this 6 frames per second. Oh, wait, no, we have to do 5. Let's try 5. I'll hit continue. Right, I'll download our rendered GIF. Again, right click, it plays through twice, and it stops. So I'll save the image as, let's save it as this, GIF 2. And we'll take a look at it in the folder and see what our resulting file size is. Did save it? It seems I've lost it with all of the like names in here. Okay, not a problem. Right click, save image as. There it is. It's under images. Why can't I find it? That's why. Okay. So in our folder, we have the second GIF image that we've exported, and it's 301 kilobytes. So again, just by switching it from 10 loops to 2 loops, and then switching it to 5 frames per second, which is 1 step up from before, we've brought this rendered GIF animation down from 1 megabyte, 1.16 megabytes, down to 301 kilobytes. So again, this is a little bit above, more than twice above the restriction of 150 kilobytes. So again, we have to go back in and see if we can re-render this at a smaller size. So let's go in here. Let's have it play through only once. So I'll change this end action to just end at 3 seconds. All right. And then set my scene duration to 3 seconds. Download GIF. And let's make this a 4 frame per second. See if we can get it under 150 kilobytes. Hit continue. Should render pretty quickly. And I'll download. And here we have the choppy animation of our web banner. But let's see just if we can test the size of this. This is our 3rd variation. So I'll change that name to 3. I'll open the folder it's in. And here's the third one. So the third one, we've knocked down to 4 frames per second, an animated GIF that only lasts 3 seconds long and is 119 kilobytes. So now we'll be able to go to Google AdWords and upload our new image ad with our animated GIF. I'll create an ad. Oh, sorry. Upload an ad and just drag and drop it from my folder. All right, so Web Banner Ad Example 3 was the one that was under the 150 kilobyte optimization. And one ad ready to view. We can preview it. Okay, let's see if we can get this to work. So the preview for it is not functioning, which is very strange. Let's see if we can reload AdWords in here. So while we're waiting for this to be viewed, did it even add it? Test add. Better add example, HTML5. Let's try to add this again. Image ad. Upload the ad. And just drag and drop it into place. So I guess we are having slight issue previewing this ad, but let's see if we can save it. I'll also add it to animatron.com. Save. Oops, select an ad group first. Save it. So apparently the GIF animation, there may be some things that we have to look at. It's not rendering it for us at the moment. So I'll have to take a look through some options here, but I don't want to go way over time. I'm already at an hour and a half for a webinar. But you get the advantages to using Animatron to be able to optimize for Google AdWords. On top of that, we also have the ability to export some video to Twitter. So I'll save that for next week's webinar, where we'll optimize some video for social media uses, like exporting or uploading to Twitter for media or animated media tweets, as well as Facebook. So let's finish this off. That took a lot longer than I thought it would to try to generate these examples. So if anybody has any questions, we'll move on to the Q&A session. If you guys have any questions, I ask that you please type those into chat, and I'll try to answer them as best as I can. If we need to do a few examples here on the screen, I'll definitely try my best to get some results. So just as a few added points before we head out today, if you guys are enjoying these live webinar sessions and would like to help us build our audience, we'd like you guys to become active in both sharing, liking, and following us on Twitter and Facebook and all the media that we spread out there. We'd like you guys to be involved with getting our name out there, getting Animatron seen by the world. We love to motivate you guys by becoming more active in our online community, especially by posting in our forum and answering and asking questions on our live forum. And you can find that just by going to our website, animatron.com, and clicking on forum up in the header area. And the forum is filled with questions from people just like you using Animatron that have a couple of very specific things that they're trying to accomplish, and maybe you haven't found exactly what you're curious about. If you haven't, I would highly suggest going through our forum and just typing in through the search field what you're looking to accomplish, or if you've found out something that you don't think anybody else has resolved, you can always create a new forum post and tell us about what you found out. If it's a bug, if it's something that you developed, some clever masking or animating technique that you think people should be aware of, we definitely encourage you to go ahead and post those in our forum. And we'd like to hear your suggestions about new webinar topics that I can cover for you in the future. If you have a project in mind but don't know how to go about designing, animating, or piecing together certain elements in the scene, I would definitely love to hear what you have to say or want to achieve in that project. And perhaps I can help you to realize your creative ideas by demoing those ideas in the next few webinars. So send those webinar suggestions into feedback@animatron.com with the subject line being webinar topic of the week. If you currently maintain an active blog or an article website, we'd love to have you guys write some guest blog posts for us so that we can host them and get your blogging masterpieces out there to the world. And it also helps us to get our name out there as well. So if you'd like to write a guest blog post for us, we ask that you send us a draft of your guest blog to feedback@animatron.com. I'll type that here onto our web ad. So our text apparently was buggy. Anytime you run into some of these bugs in our editor, just remember to refresh the page and try to test that out again and see if it works or not. So yeah, I'm running into a slight issue with my text not applying to the scene. So we'll figure that out. But anyway, if you guys would like to create a guest blog for us, again, send that into feedback@animatron.com. And we would love to hear all about what your articles are about, if they have anything to relate to animation or web design, anything in between, storylines, any cool creative animations that you've come up with, anything that has to do with basically whatever you're willing to create an article for us. We'd love to hear about it. And then finally, don't forget to like, follow, and share our Animatron YouTube channel, our Facebook page, our Twitter pages. Help our community thrive. And we'd really appreciate all the interactions that you guys have with us. Again, if you guys have any questions, please type those into chat, and I'll try to help you out with the end of our demo here for our live Q&A session. I'll stick around for a few more minutes. Until then, as always, I'm your Animatron Guru, Bryce. I'd love to see you again next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. And I'll see you then for our next weekly Animatron webinar. So if you guys don't have any further questions, that'll wrap it up for today. So thanks for following along. Have a great week, and I will see you next week. Bye-bye.